Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I thought I would sit down, do another video for you guys, drinking my morning coffee. Real coffee from a real coffee bean. Keep it real on this channel, real sips. Where's Real Sip Investigator been? He needs to chime in. So here's the topic. This is one of the things I see a lot on social media, and I get it on all my stuff. I don't think people, depending on where they watch these, don't realize all this stuff goes on multiple platforms I have with large followings. Not just YouTube's. But the arguments that I see. And when someone makes this argument, you know that they are an absolute, complete keto zealot who, again, does not know biology. They don't know nutrition. Because everyone says this thing, well, all these foods are sugar, they turn into sugar. As if this is a bad thing. I mean, something that we need to be extremely clear of, and understanding this is why type 2 diabetes and diabetes in general is such a horrifically bad thing, and why it kills people so quickly if they're not, they don't receive medical help for it, why diabetes is absolutely deadly. Because the human body thrives on blood sugar, glucose. Okay, and we need to be extremely clear of this. So again, when people are saying, well, people's sugar is too high, with whatever's going on with their diabetes, the reason that's a problem is because their cells are not using their fuel source. Okay, do people understand that? That is why it's bad. It means that your cells are not properly using their primary source of energy. And that energy is staying in the bloodstream. Okay, glucose entering the bloodstream in extremely large amounts is not a bad thing in the human body at all. It's the inability to properly metabolize it that is a disease. And again, we need to be clear. This is a disease. This is a diseased state when your body doesn't handle glucose correctly and have good insulin response and insulin sensitivity, because this is what we are supposed to be using for fuel. Okay, you have some cells in your body that can use ketones and fats for fuel if they need to, right? You do have some, but not all of them can. But like your brain, for example, requires glucose. Your brain absolutely requires glucose. Most of your cells, function better on it. And again, it's always our preferred fuel source. Yes, historically too, our species has never been a low-carb species, the Homo sapien species, ever. Anyone's telling you the contrary has not read the research. Don't bring up Homo erectus in here. It's a different species. Talking Homo sapien, us. Furthermore, we have further turned into carb burners over the last 10,000 years. Okay, because of agricultural society, and people need to remember, this is all of us. Our gene flow has shifted and adapted to that environment over thousands and thousands of years, to be even more so. All right, so we need to understand this. So, this is what we burn for fuel. It's glucose, sugar. We require it for certain things. Our brain requires it. High output activity requires it. Walking doesn't, but sprinting does. Lifting weights does. Anything that is anaerobic in nature requires glucose. That is what it burns. That is the only thing it burns. So again, we need to be clear here. It is healthy. It's perfectly healthy. So when people say these things, it converts to sugar. But then when they bring this up, they're like, well, then why are these other sugars a problem? Because of the fructose content. Okay? And believe it or not, our body prefers glucose so much that it has multiple mechanisms in place to convert glucose out of fructose. So yes, even fructose becomes it. But we consume refined fructose in such high quantities that our bodies haven't adapted to be able to do that yet, right? We exceed the mechanisms because there's multiple pathways. Our body has multiple pathways by which it does this. And when they all fail because we've overloaded too much fructose, right? Or in certain ways it absorbs faster, that's a big deal. Again, think about the refined sugars. I'm not going to go into all the nuances of gut flora there. Okay, we can't burn fructose. It's technically a poison to us because we can't use it. So our liver processes it, which again, the liver is an amazing thing, and it makes it into glucose for us. However, if we overload the liver with it, it creates fatty liver, it causes insulin resistance, all these other problems. Okay, just like alcohol does. Very, very similar process. So that's your concern. When they talk about the negatives of a sugar, we're talking about refined fructose. So this idea that because our body turns things into glucose, that it's bad. And by that same token, you look at people and go, then you don't eat protein? Because what do you think happens to about 50% of the protein that you eat? Your body also turns that into glucose. I hope people are aware of this. You do know this, right? Approximately, and it's not half for most people, it's like something like 40% or something, depending upon your biology, protein intake. That's all turned. So if you're eating a really high protein diet, that's turning into glucose also, and that's fine. Because your body is taking an excess of something else and saying, okay, we need glucose. A lot more than we need this extra protein at this point. Not saying high protein is not useful for certain things. It happens like gaining muscle and tendons. It absolutely is. Right? Hopefully that's not in debate. I don't think that's debated. But at a certain point when that gets higher, our body's like, yeah, let's turn this into glucose because we need the glucose. Glucose is what we want. It's what our body wants. It's why fat makes us fat. We store excess fat. We don't store excess carbs as fat. Our body prefers carbohydrate, right? Fat is just usually an extra fuel reserve. And again, we'll burn a lot of it though as fuel if it's what's available. We just don't prefer it. So when we get excess of it, our body says, hey, we'll just hold on to it later for emergency, for when we don't have enough of this carbohydrate. But yeah, this idea, then people say this and they're like, it causes problems, but it doesn't. It doesn't. High carbohydrate diets in an active, metabolically healthy person who are eating appropriate carbohydrate types, not table sugar and high fructose corn syrup, isn't linked to disease. It isn't linked to all these problems. In fact, it's linked to great health. It's linked to great longevity. It's also linked to being some of the greatest athletes on the face of the earth. Right? All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.